So in today's video, here's the setup. This is CBC, the Sunday Talk. We've got an MRA, we've got a former anchor of the BBC, and we've got a BuzzFeed writer. And they're talking about Ryerson University and whether or not Ryerson University should allow men's groups to speak on its campus. So let's get to it.
What do you think about this on-campus men's groups? Should they be allowed? Should they be encouraged?
Well, look, I think the left has largely won the culture war on campuses. Now it's just a question of whether the right can have some sort of dignified fighting retreat, and I think the men's rights movement is part of that. I think, obviously, all groups should have freedom of speech on campus. I don't think men should be treated any differently than women or any other group.
So you notice how he framed the issue there, right? It was a matter of left versus right, and the universities are controlled by the left, according to this guy. And he said that, yes, these are men's issues, and we're talking about men's issues, but this is really a divide between the left and between the right. Just want to make sure that we see that.
What do you think, Adam?
So I don't think it's actually a free speech issue. No one is saying that these groups shouldn't be allowed to exist. The issue is whether they should get formal recognition from student governments or funding from student governments, and that's a different proposition.
So, there's nothing really objectionable there. He's technically correct. You can say whatever you want. It's just a matter of do other people have the right to give you a platform for it. So far, I can't disagree with him.
Because, of course, they should be allowed to exist. People are allowed to have opinions that we might disagree with.
It's nice to know that you think that. It's nice to know that you think I'm allowed to have a different opinion.
My view is that you don't want to feed these trolls by shutting them down, by attacking them, because that's exactly the kind of attention that they want. I don't even...
Whoa, what? What? Did you just say that people talking about men's rights issues are trolls? Oh my gosh, you're such a fucking idiot, aren't you, dude? You're gonna keep going like that the entire fucking video, aren't you? Oh, there's no possible way that anybody could disagree with me on this, except unless they're trolls. It's the only way.
Wait a sec, they're trolls?
Yeah,
how they become so I'm a troll?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if these are your views or not.
Well, it's a men's issues group. How does that make them a troll?
Because it's not actually about men's issues, and we'll come to this, I'm sure. But
so a group that calls themselves men's rights activists are not interested in men's issues. Is that really what you just said, dude? I'm starting to think I had the right opinion of you all along.
I think what oftentimes these groups care about is exposing the culture of progressive thinking that doesn't tolerate conservatism on campuses. They have a point to prove.
How is that a bad thing?
Well, because it's not the point that the group claims to purport
to
represent.
Part of men's issues is the fighting the culture war. If you're saying one side of the fight, culture war gets to fight, the other side doesn't because it's a view you don't agree with?
No, I mean, and again...
No, but they're a troll because of that?
No, I think what they are out for is attention.
So you see what he did there? He said that, oh, MRAs don't actually care about men's issues, they care about exposing progressives. He doesn't understand the people that he doesn't agree with. He doesn't understand them, okay? There's nothing inherently right-wing about men's rights activism. There is nothing inherent about it at all. However, I think in general, there are both the right-wing, people like me, and men's rights activists, and I don't consider myself an MRA because an MRA is as an MRA does, and I haven't advocated for men's rights. I've just simply pointed out the hypocrisies of feminism. But I nevertheless see men's rights activists as, yes, as allies, I guess, in fighting this sort of dogma that has taken hold of the media, of academia, of, in a lot of cases, government, in police, in the judicial system, and all like this progressive dogma that has taken root and just does not want to let go. And men's rights activists are fighting against that, and then you've got conservatives like me that are fighting against that, and he's just lumped them all into one category along with the trolls, the people who just like to push progressive buttons. So he has no respect for people that don't agree with him, is what we have just established.
I think they want to make a point about the campus environment, and I don't want them to make that point.
Lots of groups are seeking attention. Why is that a bad thing?
Well, I think that there's a difference between seeking attention for the sake of seeking attention and seeking attention because you have a point of view that actually matters.
And how are you the arbiter of what point of view matters? I think that a lot of the shit that feminists talk about is really, really stupid, to the point of triviality. But I wouldn't say that they wouldn't have the right to say that. I wouldn't say that the university shouldn't give them the ability to say that. But you're saying that, oh, I think I myself have the opinion that these people are just seeking attention, and therefore they shouldn't have a place on campus. Therefore, their opinion is not valid in the eyes of the university.
I gotta bring Sachi in here, and then we'll open this up again.
Oh shit, now we get to hear the BuzzFeed writer. This is gonna be good.
And what do you think about these groups on campus? I mean, part of the reason for them being turned down at Ryerson was that they would make women nervous.
Yeah, it would make me nervous. If I'm a woman that goes to a university and there's a men's rights group that's right next door.
Now what's really funny about that to me, what's really funny about that is that I've already watched this video. She is going to go on at some length about how the only reason MRAs exist is because men feel threatened by women, right? That they feel that their status is being threatened, and so therefore that's why the MRA movement even exists. So, which is to say, in light of that statement that she just gave, that if women and if feminists feel threatened by MRAs, then that's the men's fault. That's the MRA's fault. But if men feel threatened by feminists, well, that's misogyny. That's the men's fault too. So the men's feelings don't matter either way. It's all about the women. And people wonder why we say that feminism is a female supremacy movement.
Of course that would make me nervous. I do agree that obviously they're trying to get attention and they want to be, I guess, validated or invalidated, and then they get to feed off of that.
So it's okay for feminists to draw attention to issues that they think are important, but it's not okay for MRAs to do that. Okay, this BuzzFeed writer is telling you that, and therefore it must be true.
But I don't think that they should exist.
But why would it make you afraid?
Because I think a lot of the men's rights movement is actually a response to anxiety about women doing better. And you see this with men's rights groups and men's rights activists who claim that women falsify rape claims all the time, which is not remotely true. And it's a direct response to women speaking up and having a voice and talking. And you see that with posters that say, you know, don't be that guy, and they've changed it to don't be that girl. And now, again, the onus is on women.
That didn't explain why you would feel physically threatened by them. That's just why you don't agree with them, but that doesn't answer why you feel threatened by them in any way. That's not a threatening thing. You're saying that they're the ones that feel threatened and they're speaking out, and that's illegitimate. But because women are threatened by them, because some feminists are threatened by MRAs, and they shouldn't be able to speak on campus.
I'm hearing a lot of projection here, saying, oh, well, you know, what your group really wants is this bad thing. When I pass a feminist group or a group of trans activists, I don't say, you know, what you really want is some negative thing I'm projecting on you. Let them organize. Let them be like any other group and let them have their say, and then we can decide whether what they say...
But their say has been bad.
That's your opinion. That's what you think. It's not their fault that you have assigned them the worst possible motives for believing what they believe. They have told you what they think, and you have decided that they must be bad people for thinking that. It doesn't matter that they didn't actually express any ill intent, they just have. Meanwhile, you are deliberately saying that people who don't talk about things the way you want them to should not have a voice on a university, which is supposed to exist for the free exchange of ideas.
Bad. Look, by the way, when I was younger, way back in the 1990s, there was genuine concern about safety on campus, especially for women. I went to McGill, and there was a lot of violence in the McGill ghetto, which is where a lot of students lived. And people organized. There was walk safe programs because it was a safety issue. People were actually being battered and, in some cases, assaulted.
I think that's different now.
Yeah, it's not any different.
So, of course, that's something that's needed. But what's happened is we've dilated the definition of the word safety. So now safety isn't just about protecting people from being hit or raped. Safety is about protecting people from ideological viewpoints that they find objectionable. And that is a perversion of the word safety.
Safety is feeling like you can go out to a party at your university campus, and if, God forbid, something terrible happens, you're not going to be disbelieved.
If colleges were serious about student safety, they would crack down on underage drinking. Because that is the number one problem. That is the number one driving factor behind the hookup culture. Is these kids who don't really have any responsibility. They don't have that sense of, like, I am here to accomplish a thing. Even if they do come out, you know, with good grades and with a good degree, they still have this mentality of, oh, I'm gonna party. And they go to these parties and they get completely fucking blasted drunk. They drink to get blackout drunk. And then, yes, inevitably, bad things happen sometimes. And if the university was serious about protecting students, they would crack down hard on underage drinking. But they can't. Do you know why they can't? Because basically, college is so expensive that anything that might possibly lead to fewer people applying or fewer people enrolling has to be discouraged. And a lot of kids, especially a lot of like rich and upper middle class kids who have more or less had everything in life handed to them, they want to go to college for the college experience, which is to say getting just blasted drunk and just having sex with strangers and just doing all these things. And in the stew of alcohol and hormones and irresponsibility, bad things happen. Most of the rapes most of these sexual encounters that end up coming before review boards in these college campuses, they happen on a Friday or Saturday night. They happen after midnight. They happen when one or both participants is underage. And there's a profile here that exists, and the colleges don't care about it. They don't want to enforce that. So if you want to talk about safety, talk about that. But don't talk about fucking rape culture. Don't talk about fucking the male gaze and stupid shit like that.
You from trolls, apparently. Trolls online because who have views you don't like.
No,
again, that's
not what I'm saying.
And another thing, it's really, really hard to take it seriously when you say, oh, it's not about insulating them from opinions, when a lot of fucking college students fucking say that. When a lot of college students say that somebody offends them, and therefore they're spreading hate, and that hate is violence, which is to say that the opinion that person expressed is somehow violence itself, that it's been done. So it's really, really hard to take it seriously when you say that, oh, it's not about ideological conformity, man, when that's how the students themselves treat it. And the university kowtows to them because of the aforementioned problem with enrollment and tuition cost.
What I'm saying is these groups want attention for the sake of having attention.
How do you know what they want? Are you a member of this group?
They're telling you.
Why is it bad to want attention? Even if you're completely 100% right, even if your interpretation of their motives is completely 100% right, you are fucking Jean Grey, and you can read their minds, and you know exactly what they want. Why is it bad to raise attention? Because whenever Black Lives Matter comes up, whenever feminists come up, people point out that there are inconsistencies in their belief system. They say, well, it doesn't matter because I'm trying to start a conversation. Well, these MRAs are trying to start a conversation too, and you just don't want to be a part of it.
They're saying we want to raise these issues, and you're saying that's the word you use. Oh, that's
so,
a bad issue.
This is the list of what they say are their issues. This is the Canadian Association for Equality, and their guidelines are followed by a lot of these campus groups. Boys, crises issues like education, bullying, suicide, which we've seen is up among older men. Men's health issues, family law, custody is an issue, probably not when you're 20, but later. Legal biases against men, and social media misandry, hatred.
But Wendy, as we know, they're just trying to get attention for these issues, which is a bad thing. And
it's funny that the host of the show had to raise these issues. Like, those two idiots have been spending the entire video saying, oh, they just want attention. And she says, oh, by the way, they actually want to raise all these issues. And what have you got for that? Those are all legitimate issues. Every single one of those is a real issue. It's not trolling to bring these things up. And the older guy here, he's being so much more polite than I could have been. I'm starting to get real tired of the people who are tolerant and empathetic and open-minded, and how they are some of the most intolerant, unempathetic, and closed-minded people on the face of the planet. It's getting a little tiresome. The more that you look into this philosophy, the more that you see just how closed-minded it really is. And they're so closed-minded that they can't even see it, and they think we're the closed-minded ones. I can understand your point of view, but I think that you can't understand mine. I could argue your point of view about as well as you could, I think. I really think that. On most issues, I really think that I could sincerely argue for your point of view, lady, BuzzFeed writer lady. I really think I could argue your point of view at least as well as you're doing it right here. And I do not have any confidence at all that you could do the same for me, based on what you have said so far. I could be wrong, but it's hard to have respect for you when you're telling me that the things that I believe are just simply not valid. It's really hard.
By the way, on campus, it is completely true that for decades, we did not take the problem of sexual assault seriously. That is absolutely true. Now, what you do sometimes see is you have a due process problem. You see this in the United States. There's 50 cases going through the courts in the United States where men have gone to the courts because they couldn't get what they consider to be due process on campus. They're saying
but that's not actually
this is
what these groups are about.
Well, that is one of the issues they have explicitly raised.
Yes, but those issues, for example, the men's health issue, right? Men don't take care of themselves. There are mental health challenges that are more pronounced in men than in women. These are real issues. The issue of making sure that there's a process on campus so we don't brand people as rapists unless they've had a chance to defend themselves against those sorts of allegations. Those aren't bad things.
Then why aren't feminists speaking up about it as we speak? Why is it that there's only one group of people that are talking about that and they get demonized by you people?
But when you lump them in with this agenda that aims to expose some liberal bias, the same sort of people that say, oh, the mainstream media are a bunch of liberals, that is doing a disservice.
It has been proven that the media has a pronounced left-wing bias. It has been proven that academia has a pronounced left-wing bias. And it has also been proven that that pronounced left-wing bias in academia affects the quality of the research. It affects, because people are not able to counter their biases because there's nobody around them that could maybe provide them a different point of view, it affects the research itself. That is a legitimate issue to raise. Even if you disagree with those studies, they are still worth talking about. And even then, MRAs only focus on men's rights issue. You are the one that is lumping them in with the broader right wing. And it's true that the right wing does tend to embrace men's rights activists, but they're not mutually inclusive. One does not necessarily cause the other. You are the one that has lumped them together.
To these issues that I agree with, John, are important.
I don't understand your viewpoint. You're saying, well, this issue is good, this issue is good, this issue is good, but they have this political bias on the current state of ideology that you object to, so they don't deserve the same recognition as 100 other groups. That makes no
what
sense.
Is the argument that these groups are really about stopping the battle against sexual assault?
What is the argument saying?
Yeah, what's the proof of that? That's what these groups are into?
Listen, I mean, you can go online and you can have 1,000 men send you a note as a woman that they would like to kill you. When I go outside, I get men stop me and ask me why I'm not smiling. This is happening all over the place. And obviously there are a lot of issues that are happening with boys and with men, but I think those are issues that have way more complexity than just this issue. Like the issue of men having higher suicide rates, I think that actually speaks to how mental health is stigmatized, how men feel like they can't ask for help. I think that's actually an issue of how modern masculinity affects men negatively.
That's your opinion. That is what you think. And that's a legitimate point of view. But guess what? There's a lot of people who disagree with you, who think that not only is feminism an inadequate solution, but that feminism is in fact part of the problem when it comes to men's issues. And and you're saying that people that say that don't have a legitimate point of view. You are not the arbiter of that, BuzzFeed lady. And those other issues you were talking about, those are not the issues that they want to raise. Okay, when feminists, when they get challenged on the point that their ideology isn't really for men, feminists say one of two things. One is what you just said, that it's good for men. But there's another thing too, that feminism doesn't have to be about men. That it has no obligation to, because men and women in their minds are separate classes, they don't have to advocate for men at all. They can just worry about women. Frankly, that point of view is one I have a lot more respect for, because I think it's more honest. What you're saying, that, oh, feminism is good for men too, that's your opinion. But feminism, the radical feminism that says, oh, men and women are just separate Marxist classes, and women have to overthrow the patriarchy any way they can, that is more honest than what you have just said. You can think whatever you want about gender issues, but you are saying that people who hold an opinion that is different from you should not have a place at the university when it comes to certain issues that are important to you.
But I feel like this movement in particular is a direct response to having anxiety about women having something to say.
Well, my opinion is that that's feminism's fault, and therefore, because they make me feel uncomfortable, they shouldn't have a right to speak at campus.
I think it's fair to say that there's something oppositional here. This is to answer John's question. It's not just about saying that men need more attention paid to their mental health issues, or men need more attention paid to the challenges that boys have in our education system. It's the fact that women are the problem, that women's equality is an issue, and that directing these men's issues as some kind of response, as women cannot gain because then men lose. Yeah. That's what I think is intellectually disingenuous. If
you can find me an MRA that actually believes that, I'll eat my hat. I'll eat my MAGA hat that I don't actually own. There are MGTOWs that think that, the men going their own way, who basically have just dropped out from society and said, to hell with women. There are MGTOWs that say that, but MGTOWs aren't MRAs. right? He doesn't understand that there are divisions within his ideological opponents. So he's taking the words that some very angry men that have been in some very bad relationships in their lives, and he's taking what they say and he's applying it to people that are activists for men's rights specifically.
Are you telling me that a campus group has been created that's oppositional in nature? That students are oppositional in nature? That they're actually being militant and feisty? And that they're going against established ideologies? That's a scandal. Because when I went to school, all of the groups conformed entirely to the dominant ideology. Okay. So I think you've identified a real scandal here. That
now you're making a straw man argument.
Because everything you've said is ridiculous.
No, because the very first thing I said,
that an oppositional group should be banned is just an entirely ridiculous thing to say.
But the very first, no, John, the very first thing I said was that these groups should not be banned. You've precisely
actually no.
Oh, let's go to the tape.
I don't think it's actually a free speech issue. No one is saying that these groups shouldn't be allowed to exist. The issue is whether they should get formal recognition from student governments or funding from student governments, and that's a different proposition. Because, of course, they should be allowed to exist. People are allowed to have opinions that we might disagree with. My view is that you don't want to feed these trolls by shutting them down, by attacking them, because that's exactly the kind of attention that they want.
Okay, now let's see what he says next.
No, but you said they should not be recognized by student societies, which means they don't get funding, and they cannot have events on campus.
So they have a right to funding.
No, but yours.
So just to be clear, you have the right to hold whatever opinions you want to have, and you can even get in groups with people who have these same opinions and talk about them. But the college, which is supposed to be committed to having a free exchange of ideas, which is supposed to be committed to academic freedom and freedom of thought and freedom of whatever, does not have an obligation to provide resources and a platform to groups that it just doesn't like, to groups that don't conform to the standard dogma. Is that what you're saying? Technically you are correct, but the bigger question is it appropriate for the university not to fund them? And how can you say no? How can you possibly say that it is a bad thing for the university to fund them? For the university to give them even just a little bit, maybe not much, but enough. And you could only say that if you were so rigidly ideological that you cannot conceive of another opinion being worthy of the same space as the opinions you agree with.
The student government has an obligation to let any group that forms get whatever money they want from the student government.
Obviously, you're not going to let a hate
There's
group
politics
in. This is a legitimate policy issue, and you're saying, no, don't let them have events on campus. Don't let them have funding.
So you should get to decide what the Ryerson student government funds.
I'm saying they should be treated fair play, and you're saying they don't get fair play.
I think one of the other things that frustrates me about the men's rights movement is that it's often a lot of straight white men talking to other straight white men about the issues that straight white men are having.
Well, let's ban that.
She has not talked about a single relevant thing throughout this entire video. All she has done is complain about the men's rights movement. It's not really about the men's rights movement. It is a little bit, but it's not really about that. It's about who gets to use college as a platform, right? Radical feminists, radical race activists, radical transgender and queer activists, they all get to use the college. They all get to use college money and college support to have a platform. But somebody who wants to challenge all that, and you're saying that they shouldn't have a platform just because you don't like them, and you're supposed to be the open-minded one.
Right, let's ban that.
Let me get the thought out.
Thing. Okay.
And I think it ignores a lot of other issues that are actually totally valid within what's going on with men. I mean, like, for example, like, they don't talk about how racialized men have different experiences than white men. They don't talk about trans men. They're not talking about queer men at all. They're talking about the most privileged class of men.
How do you know? How do you know they don't talk about that? I really want to know. Maybe they do. Maybe they just think that men as a whole are having these problems to one degree or whatever. I mean, the people that I have known that have been the most screwed over by the policies that have been talked about are black men. Right? I've seen black men get screwed over by the court system, black men that get screwed over more, or black boys that get screwed over more by the behavioral standards that we put on kids that are mostly feminized. And all these things would help benefit black people. And just because they don't talk about it in the way that you want does not mean that these are not relevant issues. It does not mean that these things should not have a right on campus.
There is.
Hey, we need our own group too, okay?
I know, you're long suffering.
So you don't see any...
You opened the door for this. You did it. When you guys, you on the left, said that black people deserve special privileges, that women deserve special privileges, that gays deserve special privileges, and that the only people that don't deserve special privileges are straight white men because of a very, very warped understanding of history, and somehow you just expected straight white men to go along with it. You prioritized victimhood. You prioritized racial identity and sexual identity and gender identity, and now you're surprised that people are using the exact same tactics that you brought on against you. You don't have a right to complain. If you agree that it is bad for straight white men to argue for the rights of straight white men, then you better shut the hell up about women's rights and black rights and gay rights and whatever else, because otherwise it's not going to stop.
of this, John, as being a backlash, like a nasty backlash against women
Actually, on
getting
this,
ahead?
I'm going to agree with the other panelists. There obviously is an element of backlash. There's a culture war out there. And there are people who feel tribalistic on both sides. They say, you know, it's feminism versus the opposite of feminism. It's men versus women. Obviously, and especially...
What's the opposite of feminism?
Well, I was trying to figure out masculinism. It doesn't sound... It does,
Holy shit!
it doesn't sound... Masculinism doesn't sound right. The point is, obviously, when you're a student, it's a time when you're oppositional. You pick sides. You're tribalistic about your ideology. And a lot of these groups are expressions of that. It's not a bad thing. It's part of campus life.
I think there's a difference between having your viewpoint heard and demanding that others listen to you as a matter of right. That's where I disagree with John.
If a college campus is completely 100% dominated by a certain kind of ideology, then yes, it has the obligation to try to diversify the amount of opinions that it has on campus, that are allowed to be expressed on campus through official support, because otherwise it's just going to turn into a cultural monoculture, which is supposed to be the opposite of what college is.
I'll wrap up in 30 seconds, but Sachi, 20 years ago it was women's rights, hear me roar. Now men's groups are trying to... Where is this going?
I don't know. I'm so sad about it.
By the way, my side is losing the culture war. We just want to go out with a little bit of dignity.
You're not losing the culture war.
We all know
you're
I'm losing
not.
the culture war.
No, you were still part of the most privileged class in North America. I don't know where you're getting that you're losing. You're losing anything.
Look at who said.
Do you remember how at the beginning of the video I said to note that he defines the problem as being left versus right? I can forgive you if you don't. It was a while ago at this point. So he defines it as being left versus right. She defines it as being between classes of people, by which mean demographics. She defines it as being between men and women, and black and white, and gay and straight. And especially straight white males against everybody else. That's what she just said. It's true that we, in North America, that we won the lottery. We have a better standard of living than 99% of the people who are living today or who have ever lived. Those of us in North America and the West in general. So she's right about that. But this idea that women and blacks and other minorities have it so much worse than men, than straight white men, are you kidding me? And so this is the thing, right? She says, I don't know where this is going to end. I'll tell you where it's going to end. It's going to end in civil war. It's going to end as long as you guys... You were the ones that introduced race and gender and all these other demographic problems into it. Now, you don't see it as a matter of ideology. You see it as a matter of men versus women. You see it as a matter of black versus white. You see it as a matter of Hispanic versus non-Hispanic. A person can change their ideology, but they can't change their demographic. And you see it as a war of demographics. And that's why this is only going to get worse. Once upon a time, there was arguably a case to be made for diversity. You know, because most of the people that went to college were upper middle class or rich white kids from the same handful of cities, and they all knew each other, and they all went to the same, you know, they all came from more or less the same kind of background, and so it's logical that they would have similar worldviews, even if they disagreed with each other, even if they disagreed politically with each other, they would still, overall worldview would be the same. So introducing people from all different walks of life into these big-time universities would arguably served a good purpose, because it's like now we can get more and more people, we can get more and more points of view about the world into this place of learning. Right. I think that there was, at one point, a legitimate argument to be made for that, but what the left has done, they've done something that really I wouldn't have thought was possible until I saw it. They've made it so that you have people from all different walks of life, from all different economic backgrounds, who fall into every demographic possible, who nevertheless all think the same way about the big things in life. They all have the same worldview, no matter where they came from. Frankly, it's really creepy, because not only do they all think the same way, which would be bad enough, but they all use the exact same phrases and the exact same buzzwords, and they always frame it the same way. It's almost like they've been propagandized and indoctrinated. But that's crazy. That's crazy. So this idea that somehow the culture war is between straight white men and everybody else, that is a fiction that you created. But it's not. It's ideological. And how can you look at the state of the culture right now in Canada and America and really say that the left isn't winning by a long shot? You have control of academia. You have control of the media. You have control of the unions. You have complete control almost of the bureaucracy. Right? Right now, in the federal government and the state governments, a lot of state governments, yes, the legislatures and the governorships and the president, those are all Republican right now for the most part. But the bureaucracies and the legal apparatus that makes up those systems tends to lean very hard to the left.
You're
It's on
losing
corporate
nothing.
boards. Look who dominates the professions
so-
In
our
every
politics. Then we
industry,
can
you're
talk when we have
here.
real
You're
votes in
sitting
those
here.
places.
I feel so empowered right now.
I know you
Thank
do.
you. Thank you.
Well,
Sarah.
everybody's happy once again. Thank you very much. I don't know if I learned anything, but it was fascinating. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Nice to
Wendy.
see you again, Adam.
Thank you.
And Sachi. And John, of course.
Well, our esteemed hostess may not have learned anything, but I hope that you did. I know I certainly did. This is Unranked Chevron signing off.